Welcome to another episode. This video I'm going to cover some Remco figure design that's going to be done in an 8-inch Mego style format. Also, thank you all for reaching out about the store page. So I've placed links for the store in the description, and I'm showing the store here. It's the same name as the channel, and this is where all batches go once they are complete. So check back every month because there'll be different batches. This is the Instagram page, which is the same name except it's underscores Figure Fiend Toys. And this is where I showcase what I'm working on and when the batches are going to be ready, what time and day. Now to give some context, John and I from Monolith Toys, we were in the midst of doing some 6 and 8-inch figures. They were fully printed, fully resin. And these are some of the examples of the stuff that we were doing. We wanted to switch over to doing 8-inch style Mego figures. And so we automatically gravitated towards the Remco style box. This box was one of our favorite boxes, and for me as a child it was literally one of the best boxes I had seen. So looking at that, looking at a template for how to work off of that and figuring out how to approach the stuff, was looking at this in detail and then looking at the bodies that existed and realizing that the original Remco body, the 9-inch scale, it's too rare and frequently not completely intact, so that wasn't going to work as an option to build out any of the figures from, so we had to look at other sources. So we ended up landing on the S-type body, glow body, to use as a basis to build out the initial figures. And then I had some old sketches I'd been doing that were working over top of some of our previous Monolith figures, and I wanted to look at how to break apart some of those components to then sculpt from. So this next sketch shows how I basically did another pass, just really rough rendering on the devil, the Frankenstein, the zombie, and the werewolf, and then ultimately those were used in sculpted form. This shows my base sculpts for each of these figures for heads and hands attached to the glow bodies, and then what specific costumes I chose for each of those. Beyond that, it was moving into the painting phase. And then one thing I wanted to focus on was, even though the pieces were glow and we wanted to consistently do the glow, I wanted to tint each of the heads and hand sets per figure so that you get a unique identity for each one of them. And the color really helped push them into the realm of like having a bit of character. After that was complete, it was moving into the photograph stage. And as you can see, the boxes had a lot of photographs that they needed for front and back. So once the photographs were complete, I moved on to setting up that final photograph for the box with my daughter, which I've shown in a previous video. The next stage was moving on to the paintings themselves. In a lot of these videos, what I show are really basic, really rough sketches that I don't spend a lot of time on, but with these, I wanted to pay homage to the original Remco illustrations, which were just phenomenal. So I spent a lot more time on these in terms of from the illustration end of rendering each one of them to represent the front box image and getting as much detail and personality in there as possible, along with some lighting to make it more dramatic. And once I had those, I was able to build out the entire template at that point in Photoshop and get the layout complete, send that off to the printer. And while the printer was doing the printing of those, I was able to move on to the skull ring because I wanted us to have a unique skull ring that was ours, that was close enough to the original but still looked unique. Once the boxes came back from the printers, you can see we had Dengar and the toy room doing boxes for us, that we received several dozen of these. So we had several of each type, and this is the first show that we had to present these at, and they did really well. They sold really well at the time. This next section is just going to showcase all the work that went into developing these, from the sketches point of view to the sculpting of the heads to the costuming, photography, illustrations, product photos. This also shows some of the additional details that were added towards the end of this process. The devil having the cross hanging from his waist and having the pitchfork, the Grim Reaper having the hourglass and having his scythe. Just little bits of character that were added to the figures in the end of the process that really showcased more personality and detail in them. Nosferatu, for example, I wanted him to be really tall and lean and narrow, so that was the choice of doing the leggings and the tight jacket. Frankenstein, I wanted to pay homage to the AHI in a way, so we went with a brown sweater underneath the jacket, which I thought looked really cool and definitely gave its own distinct look that didn't look like Mego's, that didn't look like AHI, that didn't look like Lincoln. It sort of looked like itself. And with Death, using the existing robe, but then going more skeletal and realistic for the skull itself, and then adding those little bits of detail to him around his base and the scythe, and doing some nicks and scratches all over it. Really just made him look more menacing. The last is the zombie. The zombie's the most glow of all of them because of the ribcage piece and the exposed bits of leg and arm and hand and head. Definitely was looking at doing a much more Romero-looking zombie. In the future, I think we would change the name to Undead when we release him again. Once again, I thank you all, and if anybody wants to share anything, any customs they've done or any Remco work they've done, feel free to leave that in the comment sections, or if you have any questions about any of this process that you see. Thanks again.